Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Giving Black family, wherever in the world you are. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Giving Black podcast. Now, in the podcast, we love to speak with people from all over the world who are doing phenomenal things in the scope of philanthropy, community building, who understand about generosity and live that principle to the core of who they are. Well, we've got an exciting conversation for you today. Dr. Ryan J. Smith. Dr. Smith is the president and CEO of St. Joseph's Center in Los Angeles. St. Joseph's is currently celebrating its 50th year of existence in the community. Phenomenal. St. Joseph's focuses on providing services for homeless and low-income individuals, including housing, mental health support, and vocational training. And under Dr. Smith's leadership, the center aims to empower individuals to become self-supporting members of the community. Dr. Smith's commitment to social justice is deeply personal, shaped by his own experience with housing instability and guided by a belief that dignity and care are fundamental rights. He offers a powerful perspective on the role of Black leadership in the nonprofit sector and how community-rooted organizations advance equity through direct service, advocacy, and systems change. Dr. Smith, welcome to the Giving Black podcast. It's great to have you join us so we can learn about you and your work at the St. Joseph Center there in Los Angeles. Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. I'm so happy to be on the Giving Black podcast and super excited to talk about an area that I'm really uniquely passionate about how we continue to not only just do good, but think about thinking about philanthropy more broadly. And excited because we're also celebrating 50 years of St. Joseph Center. So it's always great to talk about, the organization that I'm so fortunate to be at the helm at.
Wonderful. I read about St. Joseph's and its heritage, started by two sisters, 1976. I'm always fascinated with this aspect, and I want to kick us off on this conversation of how sometimes the most modest and humble dream, plus an action orientation, can lead in generations to come to something really great and impactful in community. And I think that for me, as I've read about St. Joseph's, kind of mirrors what your organization is about. And I dare to say also mirrors who you are as a person as well. So take
Yeah.
us back to the beginning. How did you get to become the leader of the St. Joseph's Center in Los Angeles? What has been your journey?
Yeah, well, I will start maybe with where I think my passion for social justice and the desire to end homelessness and housing insecurity and insecurity in this generation really began. So I grew up in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is my hometown, and proud to say that. And I was uniquely fortunate to have a mother who sacrificed everything to ensure that I have a quality education, our family could thrive. So we actually moved from a lower income part of Los Angeles to Culver City because the schools were good and young Black men were graduating and going on to college. And my mother did everything possible to save up to prepare a home in that community until one day I came home and I was in high school and I noticed an eviction sign on our window. My mother handed me actually trash bags and with tears in her eyes said, son, the home that we've made over, a decade, we have to vacate in 10 hours. Um, and, uh,
Wow.
um, and it was because of her tenacity, super amazing woman, that, we were actually in our car. She knocked on neighbors' doors, mind you, in Culver City, which is kind of a suburb of Los Angeles, and said, we don't have much, but if you would allow me and my son to stay here in your living room, until I land on my feet, this allows him to stay in the school district so that he can graduate from Culver City High School. And
Wow.
because that person said yes, because even in that challenging time, my school community and a Black assistant principal paid for my college application to go to UCLA when I wasn't sure if I should even continue. That I was able to go to UCLA both undergrad and graduate. And that I, became a product of a continuum of care that made sure I could thrive. So this is deeply personal to me because it's really a part of my lived experience.
It's not often that I'm left speechless,
Mm.
and I just want to thank you for sharing and give a phenomenal shout out to your mother for her tenacity, as you say, um, to the loving kindness of your neighbor as well, and
Absolutely.
your principal who saw the talent that you had and was willing to be generous enough to share part of their financial resource with you so you could excel in life. That for me epitomizes my dream and definition of philanthropy and its
Yes.
purpose in our lives in community, right? Where we see a need and we are able, with the very modest resource that we have, sometimes really generous resource, of course, but even in times of modest resource, we're able to share that little bit. And today, uh, here we are speaking
Mhm.
because of the generosity of folks who came before us. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to share something with you as well that
Please,
may
please.
resonate. My parents were African immigrants to London, UK.
Mm,
And when my dad first arrived in the UK in the 60s, it was like 10 men in one bedroom, 10 African men in one bedroom because, there were nobody was kind of climbing over themselves to rent apartments to black folk during those days, right? So the
understand that,
men
yes.
would first
Mhm,
arrive, they would get one accommodation, and 10, 10 guys would live and sleep there. My mother came, and so we needed to move to my aunt's house. We lodged in my aunt's attic,
mm,
um, the
mm,
top of her house.
mhm,
I remember that, that as a child feeling like this was not really home. We
mhm,
didn't have a home to call
mhm,
our own
mhm,
until
mhm,
I was 10 years old.
mhm, mhm,
And
mhm,
and then I had my own bedroom, and we had a living room, and the kitchen was separate to the bedroom, and all the things that I was not used to all of a sudden began to manifest. And I want to ask you a question. Your background and mine in relation to uh, housing insecurity.
mhm.
Has anything changed from your generation and mine, or are these issues still pervasive within the Black community in Los Angeles?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for sharing your story. I mean, so much of that resonates to me, both in your calling out of our neighbors, our dear neighbors, because it's philanthropy with a capital P when we think about philanthropic institutions, but there is what individuals do to give back. And so much of our work we say at St. Joseph Center is about uplifting our dear neighbor, right? So whether it's our physical neighbor or whether it's our society of individuals who we should care for, right? I grew up with this idea of a linked fate theory that you can never be truly successful if your brothers and sisters and communities fail. That
Absolutely.
my success is contingent on you being successful,
Yeah.
and vice versa. That this is not an individual pursuit of happiness and freedom. This is a collective pursuit of those things, and it's such a part of the way that I lead and think about work and giving as well, and also answers a little bit of your question. I profoundly believe housing should be a human right, that everyone should have a place to call home, and the home that you said that you came to. We all should have that experience. And yet, the affordability crisis, whether you are here in Los Angeles or in the UK, or in many of our big cities across the globe, is becoming more and more challenging for so many folks. But here in Los Angeles, we're no exception. So even though Black people make up 7% of LA County, we make up a third of the population that's experiencing homelessness. And we are over indexing on the population that's really suffering from joblessness as well as food insecurity. Now, this isn't a reflection of the tenacity and brilliance and all the things we know of Black communities. It is a reflection of the systems that have been designed to keep access to quality housing and stability far away from Black folks. So whether we're talking about redlining in
Mm.
Los Angeles, that we weren't able to purchase homes in many communities, we weren't able to have access to banks, we weren't able to ensure that we could engage in many of the economic systems for so long in the city, that has had a pervasive impact on what currently happens today. So that number is a reflection of systemic and institutional racism and classism that continues. And a lot of this is an upstream issue that we have to focus on. A lot of my work is upstream and downstream. But it is, I would love, we have made progress, but a lot has unfortunately stayed the same since I was a youth.
Yeah. Thank you. And I would echo that. I mean, yes, in the UK, particular demands on housing, where affordability now is just like out of the question, frankly.
Right.
And here also in Toronto, where I'm now based, right? Huge housing insecurity issue, and also so much of what we earn in Toronto goes towards putting a roof over our heads post tax, right? And I know that that is also the case in Los Angeles. Just to put some of what you shared, Dr. Smith, into context. So Black people in Los Angeles area account for about 10% of the population,
Hmm.
at about 30%
Hmm.
of the housing insecure population.
Hmm.
uh, uh, and renters are highly rent burdened. 62% are paying at least 30% of their net income towards rent, leaving only a residual bit left for all the other utilities, transport, family, food, all the things that are necessary to help us survive. And then eviction also.
Yes.
Black renter households have 1.6% the eviction rate per 100, which is almost double that for people in white communities. So definitely there seems to be a legacy and a history of housing insecurity that you have inherited
Hmm.
as a person who now leads St. Joseph's. Talk to us about some of the programs now that you have developed to address some of these systemic issues that both you and I have described.
Yeah, so the St. Joseph Center, as I've mentioned, has been around for 50 years in Los Angeles. It was founded by two sisters who took social justice classes and taught social justice classes at a local house high school here in LA, Mount St. Mary's, and decided they couldn't just learn and teach about; they had to be about it. By the way, when I say sisters, I do mean nuns. So these were two nuns
Yes.
uh, who uh, um, who ended up pooling resources, opening up a storefront in Venice, California, which is towards the beach where there were a lot of people experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. They bought a fire engine red pickup truck
Wow.
and went around the community distributing information about Section 8 and food and groceries and how they could support themselves. And from that humble beginning is now an institution. We support 15,000 people a year across LA County with a number of different programs. They happen to spell home, our big levers. The H in home is housing. So we actually support the throughput of from interim housing, where you bring folks who may be experiencing homelessness outside inside to help prepare them for the documentation, all of the resources they need so they can find the permanent housing. We have 17 permanent housing sites that we support. We recently opened a La Ramona interim housing community in South Los Angeles, which is the heart of the Black community in LA, that supports families who are experiencing homelessness. And just last week, we had a ribbon cutting for our Berkeley Station housing unit for youth who are
Wow.
experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. So you can imagine these 18, 19, 20-year-olds. Youth are becoming, unfortunately, a more prominent number of people who are experiencing homelessness. And now you have a low income affordable housing effort that is dedicated to our youth at St. Joseph Center. So we're excited about housing. The O stands for outreach. We have multidisciplinary teams, people who are nurses. I consider these first line responders, people who've experienced homelessness, going out every day, meeting people where they're at, providing them resources, and able to help their journey. The M in home stands for mental health. We have over 60 mental health professionals on staff who are dedicated to ensuring that we're providing quality health and mental health access for folks who may be experiencing homelessness, housing, security, and poverty. And the E stands for economic mobility. So we believe in housing first, but it's not housing only. Once you receive a house, you have to sustain yourself in housing. So you have to have a quality job. You have to have economic opportunity so that you can continue to keep the lights on, you can continue to pay rent. We run workforce development programs, Bread and Rose's culinary kitchen that has trained the next generation of chefs. In fact, amazing story. Stephen graduated from our program when he came in. He was actually, unfortunately, impacted by substance use disorder. He became sober in the program, graduated, became a chef for our hometown LA Clippers, began a
Wow.
pop-up restaurant at Intuit Dome, which is where the Clippers play, and became one of the lead chefs during All-Star weekend with the NBA. That all happened within a year of him taking our program. We also have technology programs, Co-Talk and Fortify, really dedicated to giving people technology and project management skills. So we do the entire throughput. The great thing I'll just say is that we are 400 staff strong. The majority of them are Black. Almost 60% of our staff are Black. Many of them have experienced homelessness themselves. And we are a Black-led organization. The majority of our leaders and the executive team are Black. So we are reflective of the population that we're trying to make a difference with.
Wow. Wow. That's- Thank you. Thank you for sharing. You know, Gosh, as I keep, you're going to hear this from me a lot during our conversation, I think. I'm just like speechless, like 15,000 people that you support in the community. Just
Thank you.
hats off to you, Dr. Smith. Hats off to your team for their dedication. Hats off to you for your leadership, your team for their dedication, to the two sisters who had the vision, this modest red truck that they're driving around and trying to figure out how can we utilize this to help and bring love to the community now just phenomenally expanded. Um, the, the housing, the outreach, the mental health, and the economic mobility, the home that you are seeking to provide. I just wish you strength to strength on that. And
Mm,
I'm also by profession a professional fundraiser, and I
mm,
know for a fact that philanthropy will play a massive part of the success that you have just shared, getting you from year one to year 50 that you celebrate now. My prayer and hope is that in the next 50 years, we won't be having these types of conversations about housing insecurity and unemployment and paying uh, uh, too much to put a roof over our heads, particularly for those generations to come. So, what then are you spoke about the upstream component of your work? What then are some of the structural changes that we need to see in our communities to make sure that the narrative around housing insecurity and poverty, economic poverty, are kind of thing of the past, or at least we're building effective solutions to them to prevent them from ever happening in any community, frankly? What are some of those things that perhaps you are working on that you dream about that you would like to see?
yeah. Well, on the narratives piece, I do want to say there's a couple things that we need to uplift. Progress is happening. So in Los Angeles, over the last 2 years, we have seen a sustained decrease, almost 20% decrease in unsheltered homelessness in LA County writ large. And then
Wow.
on the west side, where we've served as the coordinated entry service lead, so we've served as a lead in our community, we've seen nearly a 25% reduction in homelessness. I think that's important because people need to hear our work is working, even when it's
Hmm.
challenging and even when it's tough. The secretary of housing for the California of Los Angeles, Tamika Moss, recently said, LA is doing an amazing job housing folks. We're almost housing people like 200 people a day in LA alone. The challenge is as we are housing 200 people a day, there's approximately 270 people who are falling into homelessness and housing insecurity. So even as we're doing an amazing job housing
Yeah.
folks, we have an inflow issue. More people are falling in to homelessness and housing insecurity, given the affordability challenge and giving our housing challenge, then we're able to house them. So a lot more of our
Mm,
work is focused on prevention upstream. How do we ensure that we help people before they're evicted, before they're experiencing homelessness, before they're in their car? So
mm,
all of that really does matter. We also, for our 50th, you talked about narratives that's so powerful to me. We're telling 50 stories for 50 years, telling the stories of people who have been successful and have made it. For example, I'll share the story of Rachel. Rachel was never experienced homelessness, living in her car with her two daughters. Was scared, right, as a young mother, about where to go. Black woman, young black woman, was being harassed by the police, all of that. She found St. Joseph Center, and we were able to place her in our South Los Angeles open air site called Sola. It was actually an RV. It was a really nice RV where we had a whole community of folks there, and her children would go to class and say, "Come over. I have an amazing van house." They would say, "No, it's called the RV." They said, "Amazing van house you see." And the mother said, "I understood I was on the right path because my daughters felt comfortable enough telling people where they lived.
yeah.
That never
Yeah.
happened before when we were in our
Mm,
car." And then even though they were there for 6 or 8 months, we were able to find them permanent housing. So they have a place to call home. And now she works with folks who were formerly incarcerated, who've been experiencing housing insecurity to help them along their path. And we did an event recently, and you mentioned your beginnings. The sisters who helped found the organization, many of them were there, and she turned to them and looked at them at the side and she said, I just want to let you know your work is not in vain, that because of what you did 50 years ago, I exist, and that my daughters have a place that's safe to stay. That is a powerful reminder of what it means to give and what it means to serve. And I tell all the data and stuff, but it's nothing like a good story to remind us of the collective power of coming together and giving folks the things that they need.
Yeah, goodness. Yes. Another silent moment from me as I just gotta really cogitate on the impact of what you're saying. I love the fact that you can chart progress, for a city to be housing 200 people a
Mm,
day.
mm.
Shout out to those who are leading the city of Los Angeles and coming together
Yes.
and working in community. You are making a big difference, and I love the fact that you remind us that we should focus on the successes as much as we focus on the barriers, because that's what gives us that balanced story, right? Yes, we know what these challenges are, and often we are well familiar with them, and then also, though, let's celebrate the goodness that we have been able to achieve, because that
That's right.
inspires us to know that we're making a difference, but also to propel us forward to continue to do that work. You and I both know that in the world of social impact, it can often feel a lonely place, just given the scale and the breadth of the challenges that we come across almost every day of our working lives. And we need those glimmers of hope to be able to sit and reflect and say, you know what, it isn't all going the way we want it to go,
Mhm.
but at least there are some things that we can say completely inspire and motivate us to keep going forward. I want to
That's
ask you in relation to this, Dr. Smith, how have philanthropists and the philanthropic community turned up for you and your work at St. Joseph's? What role have they played in the successes that you have shared in this conversation?
yeah, a profound role. And really supporting the organization in a couple of ways. One, we have individual donors that we've had, for 2 to 3 decades who are giving small amounts. Some of them are faith-based folks. Some of them actually volunteer. We have a Bread and Roses kitchen that is a restaurant for good, just for people experiencing homelessness. And many of the volunteers are the waiters and waitresses that provide amazing meals, almost a million meals over the last 30 years. Um, but a lot of them donate. I say that matters because we often think about our philanthropic institutions, which I'll go to, but the fact that you have individuals who can give 20 or 30 or $40 makes such a difference in the work that we do. We're talking about Black philanthropy, and a powerful example, and I'm sure you've talked about in the podcast, is the Black church, right? When you think about a Black philanthropic institution in the
Mhm.
United States, it is an example of a fully funded Black institution of Black people giving every week
Yes.
that has
Yeah.
assisted, that ensured that these institutions thrive. That's a powerful example of how individual giving can have a profound impact on the institutions that hold down and anchor organizations. So just the kind of individual giving is great. We have amazing philanthropic partners as well. We receive funding from the Weingart Foundation here in Los Angeles. That is actually ran by a Black woman, Joanna Jackson. She gave us money to do a lot of our systems change work. About 10% of all of our funding is for philanthropic organizations, but they're so we have a lot of philanthropic institutions who are giving as well as individuals. Um, but it's also an interesting inflection moment for philanthropy, as there's so many needs that are, I think, um, are are challenging the philanthropic community to think differently about their work and where they give and how they give in real time. Particularly since this new administration in the United States began, it has we've seen social services cut dramatically. Philanthropy is stepping up in a lot of ways, and I think it's important, particularly for Black-led organizations.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think it's brilliant. And, you know, um, the Black church, I understand
Mhm,
certainly from an African
mhm.
American
Yes.
perspective, is the foundation of much of philanthropy that goes
Yes.
on in the community from the time when Africans first hit the shores.
That's right.
Faith at least is what carried them, and then clearly our Christian faith
Yes.
came later, but played a very important role from Jim Crow all the way through to civil rights in affecting change in U.S. communities for African Americans. And I'm glad to hear and to know that that continues even till today, and excited to see how it continues to grow, especially in these challenging times. It leads me on to another aspect of conversation that I thought might be interesting for you and I to speak about. And often I find that there is this juxtaposition between how we use language as
Mhm,
fundraisers to
mhm.
emote or evoke um, generosity from
Mm,
others, and how we can balance that with the pursuit of dignity
yes,
and equity
yes,
and humanity
yes.
of the people that we bear the responsibility to support in community. How do we avoid the characterization of people who have unique and important needs without turning them or dehumanizing their experience and who they are, and without commoditizing
That's right.
their experience as human beings? How have you if, how have you dealt with that issue? Not that I'm not implying that it is an issue at all for St. Joseph's, but I'm really asking, like, how do you avoid it from happening? What are some of the tools and the techniques that you use to uphold the humanity and dignity of the people that you support in community?
Yeah, what a really profound question, and a very important one when we talk about fundraising, storytelling, how we think about the work, because so often, um, the way in which our institutions are designed, it's let's be very deficit oriented about the people we are supporting in order to garner philanthropic support. And truthfully, particularly at St. Joseph Center, where we believe in uplifting the humanity, dignity of people, that would not work for us. So there's a couple things we have to recognize: that when we ask folks who've experienced homelessness, housing insecurity, job insecurity, to tell their story, that it could be very traumatizing and re-traumatizing as well. First, we need to recognize that the people we serve are a part of our beloved community. These are
Yeah.
people who are our neighbors, our champions. In fact, the way we talk about them are they are our lived experts. They know what
Mm,
it means to have gotten through and been successful, or they know currently the conditions, and we treat them as lived experts. We ask them for we've had an advisory board of lived experts who have given us feedback about the way that we approach the work. We have panels where they are telling us how we should think about it. So these are not the subjects in which we do work. These are our partners in moving our mission forward. And I think that's very important. We value their voices. And I will never ask someone to tell their story if they want, once again, do not feel comfortable. We talk about, is this a traumatizing experience? Are you okay with it? And also, honestly, we provide them resources for giving us time to tell their stories as well, because we
Right.
realize,
Yeah.
right, like this isn't just this. This is,
Yeah.
this is their time, right, as well. So that is really important. Um, I I also, because I've experienced housing insecurity, understand that we are no better or no different, right?
Yeah.
So I believe in
Absolutely.
deficit orientation
Yeah.
and celebration and being
Yeah.
excited and making folks comfortable.
Yeah.
And to your point, it's not us versus them. This is we. You are a
Mm,
part of this as well. We
yeah.
all have to play a role together that I think is really powerful. The last thing is, Dr. Martin Luther King talked about the power of beloved community, right? That we as a community could come together to address poverty and to end hunger in this generation. And we don't do it alone. So we talk about, with our donors and our community, you are a part of this beloved community. You are no better than the person
Yeah.
who's experiencing housing insecurity. In fact, 3 weeks down the road, it may be you, or we know it's a
Mm,
loved one that you may have,
yeah.
given the conditions. So what's the saying? If they come for you in the morning, they'll come for me at night. We are all connected here, right? So
Yeah.
see the humanity in your fellow neighbor the way you see it in me.
Wow. You've just shared a message for our time, sir. I tell you, that you have just shared a message for our time. I think we are under tremendous pressure to not see our neighbors as our neighbors, to alienate them and point the finger at them, to say that our problems are because of them, and the fact that you have just shared that poignant reference to beloved community, referenced by Martin Luther King.
Yes.
Do we need to say any more? you know, like if we can just enter into beloved community, how much more joy and love and peace and hope and solution will we find ourselves reveling in,
That's right.
right? As opposed to the misery of hate and injustice and unkindness and greed and, you know, all the things that I think you and I and the beautiful community at St. Joseph's are trying every day to counter. And certainly, I'm going to tell you that in this conversation, my spirit for social justice has been uplifted by you, Dr. Smith, because hearing you speak as a practitioner in community and hearing the values that you have and the history that you have shared, your person really speaks to me in volumes, and I know that that also will be the case for our listeners. As we kind of wrap up our conversation, as it were, um, I'm curious to know. I mean, you've shared so much and enlightened me uh, uh, more than a little bit. Let me put it that way. As you were thinking about coming into this conversation, was there something that you thought you might want to share that perhaps you haven't had the opportunity to share yet? Or was there a curiosity or a question that you kind of thought, oh, I want to put that out there to see how midday or I might respond. I'll leave the mic open to you. Just
Oh, it's
just continue to riff with us, right? You know, you can tell I don't want this conversation to end,
oh,
right?
you're so
So this is my way of keeping you on
yeah.
screen and hearing your
Oh.
voice speak
Well,
to these very
well,
poignant issues and topics.
Well, I do feel a kindred spirit in the work that we do, and now I know when I go to Toronto, the first stop that I am making, because I think it's so powerful in the way in which you are framing philanthropy, about how we give to each other, how we support one another, monetarily and otherwise. Like it's really really important. Maybe the only thing I would say is, recently, here in the States, the Association for Black Foundation Executives. It's been around since the 70s. Actually released a report 3 days ago that said, there was so much philanthropic money going to Black-led organizations after the murders of George Floyd and others in the height of the BLM movement. And there were a lot of commitments that were made. And basically, the study says that those commitments have dried up, that a lot of those conversations in 2020 do not exist in 2026. And they were transactional, not transformational giving. So Black-led organizations, I think, are grappling with that. Um, we are at an inflection point. To your point, people are sowing seeds of divisiveness. It's very easy to be able to point to what's different between us than what is similar. People are deciding whether our government is deciding who can even get benefits to put food on their table. Food is being weaponized. Housing is being weaponized. Um, so when the sisters started the organization around uplifting your dear neighbor, I will just say it's a powerful proclamation that we can, even despite our government institutions, despite the narrative and what we're hearing in the media, despite being thousands of miles away or seas away, we can see the collective humanity in each other. And
Yes.
even in a time of need, we can give of what we have, because there will be a day where we may need the same, or a day in which the person you gave to will be able to give to others. It is, love is a powerful force for good, and philanthropy is a reflection of love. So I'll just end that. Let's continue. Let's continue on our love campaign, our love journey, even at a really difficult time.
Hey, listen, I'm signed up. I'm there. I'm there already. I'm number one on your list. And I definitely am going to hold you also to be a number one on your list when you come to Toronto. Uh,
I can't
uh,
wait.
please, just
Yes.
like you got my deets and my coordinates.
Yes.
Let's make it happen. Uh, Dr. Smith, I tell you, sitting in this chair is a real blessing for me because I get to talk about my favorite subjects to phenomenal people like yourself. And you are generous enough to continue to teach me in every conversation. And you specifically in this conversation, as my guest, have been really generous with your time, with your insight, um, and with the uplifting call to action that we live our lives as neighbors in loving care and harmony towards each other. I can think of no more powerful call to action than for us to love each other, and that actually is a divine call, right? That is a divine call that is placed on all of us as human beings. So I also have a tradition. Is the other tradition. First, I want to thank you profoundly from my heart to yours. I'm going to keep charting your success and your progress, and I want to celebrate with you your 50 years and the years that are to come as you alleviate some of the serious challenges, continue to be successful, shall I say, in alleviating some of the serious challenges in Los Angeles. I never like to be the one to have the final word on our podcast.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hand the mic over to you to perhaps speak to our audience, or even pose a question to them that may have been on your mind. But we'll end our conversation. And I hope this is not the end of all of our conversations, but the end of this conversation, just by handing the mic over to you. And perhaps you can tell us how people can contact you, how people can support the work of St. Joseph's, anything we can do to uplift you and your team. Please take the mic and just share that with us.
Yeah, I appreciate you handing the mic, and I would just say, Lumide, like I really appreciate the space in which you've created here. I feel seen, and I'm sure so many of your guests feel that way. But to create a space where you are having these dynamic conversations about how we give and uplift each other is remarkable. So I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for doing the hard work and the hard work, and appreciate the invitation. And I'll take you up on this being the beginning and not the end of our conversation. St. Joseph Center. So, if you want to learn more about St. Joseph Center, our website is www.stjosephctr.org. That's stjosephctr.org. And that will give you a good sense of the work that we do. You can also follow us on Instagram at St. Joseph CTR and other platforms as well. If you are in Los Angeles on June 6th, we have an amazing gala where we will be honoring our 50th anniversary. So we'd love to invite you to be a part of that. We have a 50th anniversary fund. So if you'd like to give to any of the important things we're doing around housing, food insecurity, economic mobility, we would love to be able to support. And then you know what? I'll give it out there. I tend to be someone who communicates. My email is rsmith at stjosephctr.org. Feel free to email me, and I'll stay in touch.